All right, so today we are going to be doing a front brake bleed on a 2018 Yfz450 Sport Quad. To my knowledge, they're the same with really any quad at all. It's pretty easy overall on how to do this. I recommend if you're racing to do this often because brake fluid can go bad and it can kind of rot out the gaskets inside of your calipers. You also gonna want the best performance you can possibly get out of your front brakes, considering that a lot of quad people, for some dumb reason, don't really use a whole lot of back brake. So your front brakes are by far the most important. You don't necessarily have to take your wheels off for this. I recommend if you want to do it kind of easier to go ahead and take your wheels off. I'm going to here in a second. If you also have a partner, this job is a whole lot faster and a whole lot easier. So as we get into this project here, you don't need to have anything ripped off. I am actually making a second video at this very moment about a fuel filter replacement on this quad, but you don't need to take off the hood or really anything other than the caliper cap, which is right here, which is just 2 Phillips. If they are stripped, don't even bother with this project because you need to have that cap off. If they are stripped, get them out of there, replace them ASAP. Just do not ruin the threads for your master cylinder because those can get pretty expensive pretty quick. So, nevertheless, on this quad, I am noticing a lot more stopping power with my, I guess what would be from the video's standpoint, left wheel, or if I'm riding it, the right side wheel here. The left one does not have a lot of stopping power at all. In fact, I can lock them up on concrete, and this one will lock, and that one won't really, I mean, it'll slow down, but it won't lock up like it should. So that's telling me a couple things. One, it's telling me I could have some air in the line, which happens. It just happens over time. Or that my hydraulic brake fluid is bad. Or it's telling me that there is possibly a problem in here, inside the brake caliper itself. In this specific quad's case, I've actually had these off not too long ago because I replaced the brake pads, which we will lightly go over as we're down in that area. And I checked the pistons, everything seemed to be working okay, so the problem kind of seems more like it lies a little bit more in the brake lines or maybe up here with some bad fluid. So since that is the tire that is bad, that is the one I'm going to take off here right now, and we will continue once the tire is off. Okay, so I've got my wheel off. I'm just gonna go ahead and touch briefly on how to change these brake pads if you want to. And like I said a second ago, in this quad's case, I just did the brake pads maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, so I'm not worried about doing that. It is a really easy process. What you'll need to do is take off this 12 mil nut or bolt right here, as well as this 12 mil bolt right here. Your brake caliper will come off, and come back over here, and you will take that little 5 Allen key out, and that little 5 Allen key out, and your brake pads will just slide out. It's pretty simple. Then you just repeat the process, putting them back on. Slide your new brake pads into your caliper, put your Allen key bolt in, as well as the bottom one, crank them down, slide your caliper back on over your rotor. You might need to push your pistons out, but different video for a different time. Anyways, so now we're back here. If you're familiar with doing your brake pads on, or excuse me, doing a hydraulic bleed on a car, it is a very, very, very similar process. What you're really trying to avoid here is getting any sort of hydraulic fluid on your rotors or your pads. It is extremely easy to ruin rotors and ruin pads if that happens. So what you're gonna do to avoid this is maybe put a rag or something right here and down below. And when you are squeezing your front brake, which we'll get to in a second, really don't just harp on it. you're not trying to shoot brake fluid all over the place. So just be really easy and kind of guard it like this. You want to keep your brake caliper on there because if you don't, and worse off if you don't have brake pads in, you can risk pushing the pistons out of the caliper and you are in a whole nother world of issues. So just really kind of guard that. That's kind of what you're looking for out of whatever you tend to use. And I'm going to apply a rag to that right now. And we are pretty much ready down here. So I'm going to apply that rag right now. All right, so I've got my rag applied into my caliper here. Again, it's just to guard your little bleed nut. And now what we're going to do is come up here. As I touched on a second ago, you need to take off these two Phillip head nuts, or bolts, excuse me. Also make sure that when you're in this area, you read the top of the cap. For the quad here, it says .4 right here. That is the fluid you will want to use. So make sure you have .4. I believe, to my knowledge, pretty much any sort of off-road vehicle is .4. It's pretty, I don't know what would be .3 off the top of my head, but for the Yamaha Yfz450's case, it is most definitely .4. So right now, I'm going to take my Phillips screwdriver and take off that top cap and show you what is underneath that. So I've just taken off those Phillips bolts. Mine came off really easy because I had this open not too long ago. You can see a bunch of dirt around the seal here. In a second, you'll want to clean that out. A great way to do that without getting any dirt in there is to put your finger towards the middle and wipe outwards. Make sure your finger is clean. Do it again and again and again, and repeat the process until you're satisfied that there is no dirt anywhere. It is not going to get into your brake while the cap is on, but while the cap is off, you could run into that. So make sure finger in the middle, to the side, and wipe out. But in order to do that correctly, let me put my little bolts back in my cap here. In order to do that correctly, you need to take off this little white or whatever plastic cover. Dirt bikes don't have this. They do have a little rubber cover, but I don't know what the plastic bit is for. You're obviously going to need it, so don't go just tossing that anywhere. You want to make sure wherever you do put it is a clean surface, because again, you don't want any dirt getting into your master cylinder here. This quad has some dirty brake fluid. That is supposed to be pretty clean. So we're going to be doing a full bleed for this. What you're going to be doing is holding your brake in as tight as you can, reaching down with a 8mm wrench and unscrewing that bleed valve. Once you do that, you will feel your brake go all the way into the bar. Hold it there and then tighten your cap. So let's say I have my 8mm wrench there on it with my right hand. I've broken the valve open by loosening that little bleed valve. As soon as I do that, this brake is going to shoot towards the bar. Hold it as tight as you can. While holding that tight, tighten that brake nut right back up and repeat the process over and over. So you will tighten that up, let off your front brake, just like that. Pump it up maybe once or twice, squeeze in, loosen that. Fluid will shoot out. If it doesn't shoot out, that means you have air in your line. So you break that loose, squeeze to the bar, tighten it up, let off. Again, squeeze, loosen, that'll go to the bar, tighten it up, then let off. And you're gonna do that over and over and over and over until your mind is dull, all while continuing to make sure there is fluid in this. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that a couple times. You can kind of see my front brake. I don't know if you can hear it. It feels spongy, and then right towards here it gets really like just gritty feeling. So we're gonna do that a couple times. For the other side, you will do the exact same thing. Just make sure that when you're squeezing to the bar, you are holding it until that nut has been loosened and retightened. Otherwise, you will suck air through the bottom. You will suck air back through that bleed nut, and you got to repeat the whole process over again. So squeeze, loosen, that front brake will go to the grip, tighten up that nut again, and then let your brake out over and over and over. So I'm gonna do that now. We will see how the front brake feels when I'm done. Okay, so I've done this a couple times now. You can see my bleed valve is doing what it's supposed to do. I recommend as you are doing this with your, where did I just set my wrench? Right here, damn 8 mils. Use the closed end, slip it over the hole, and as your finger's on the brake, just kind of slowly turn this. Obviously you have pressure in the system, and if you do it fast, that brake fluid will just shoot up. And when it shoots up like that, it's real easy to get on the rotor. So like I said, recommend just with your hand, with your left hand on the front brake, squeezed. You just be really easy as you turn this. And if you go slow enough, it will kind of just flow onto your rag or out of the bleed valve and onto your rag versus shoot out. You can also see up here, I'm getting a little bit low on my fluid. So I'm gonna rim it back up and continue to do this process. So we've got a couple pumps into here now. I filled up the top reservoir a few times and just wanted to show you guys what fresh brake fluid looks like now versus what it did a second ago. You can see straight down to the bottom of the reservoir. So dirty brake fluid will be super dark, but it's supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be a nice kind of lighter tan color. It's still gonna get cleaner as you work the old brake fluid through, but yeah, it's supposed to be super clean. As you kind of saw from an angle a minute ago, it is getting there, it is cleaning up. I'm just continuing to do the process, bleeding it from the bottom. And we will just keep going here. And like I said, once I'm, done this probably 2, 3, 4 times, meaning, got it pretty close to empty, filled it back up, pretty close to empty, filled it back up, done that 2, 3, 4 times. I will call that side good and start to this side. The front brake already feels night and day difference. And you will probably get a hand cramp by doing this if you don't have a person helping you. It already feels way better, so I'm excited to try it out on the track next time I ride. But yeah, so gonna keep doing that process right now. Just wanted to show you guys right quick the difference with fresh brake fluid in there versus dirty old brake fluid. All right, so I have bled the fluid through the bleed valve a few times now, enough to where I've had to fill up my reservoir 4 times, maybe 5. And I'm about to fill it up again. But I'm pretty happy that I got all of the fluid through the line there, or any sort of air or anything that might have been making that side of the quad feel weird or not work correctly. So with this tight, with my bleed valve tight, I'm gonna go ahead and put my cap back on. Just a little rubber thing that goes over the top. I'm going to fill my reservoir up again. As far as brake fluid, I'm just using basic Napa stuff. Unless you want to pay or like race specific stuff, which I do recommend, but this is fine too. Race specific stuff is just going to ensure that when your brakes get hot, they don't fade as fast. I'm going to go ahead and take off this wheel and repeat the very same process a few times on this side. Again, always making sure that my reservoir has fluid in it. You're really trying to avoid, you can see the bottom of the reservoir. Now you can see that hole in the bottom of the reservoir. That's where your fluid's gonna get sucked into. If you do not have brake fluid in your reservoir, air will get sucked into your lines, and then you have to repeat this process over and over and over and over and over again because you have air trapped in your lines, and because you have nothing pushing from the bottom, you have to work that air all the way through your line and all the way out the bottom, and it's going to take a long time. So it is always very important to make sure that there is fluid in here at all times. But I'm gonna go ahead and take off this wheel now. All right, so I've got my brake tightened up back at the bottom. I've got my reservoir full. This is how clean it's supposed to look. You can see another little air bubble right there on the top. That's how clean it's supposed to look. Earlier in the video, it was really, really dark, which means the fluid was pretty old, pretty bad. So we're just kind of gonna work that out. Just continuing to push any air that might be at the top through. It feels pretty good. Honestly, that's about it. What we're gonna do now is put my top cap back on. I put the bolts here just to make sure I wouldn't lose those. So we're gonna put the top cap back on right now. This is gonna go just like that, and press down into there. Then you'll take your cap, put that right on top, just like it was originally, just like that. Put your bolts back in, tighten those down with your Phillips here. And that project is done. You will want to triple check, double check, whatever you want to do. Make sure that your, oops, I already put the cap back on down here. You want to make sure that your bleed nuts are tight, which these two are, and it is all done. All you got to do now is put your wheels on, and that project is done. All right, so finally, I got my wheels put back on both sides. You should be able to spin your tire and then lock instantly with little pressure on your brake, which mine does. Both sides feel great. I still have my quad torn apart from another thing I'm doing, so I can't necessarily go out on the road and test it, but feels way better. As far as your brake goes, should feel butter smooth. Shouldn't feel like it's going in increments or pulling in a little bit and then getting kind of sticky. It just feels way better all the way through. Front feels way better. Should help you guys a lot. It's gonna help your braking power a lot. It's gonna help your brakes last longer in the long run. Then help your seals not deteriorate. Just a great thing to do once every couple months, or if you put a number on rides, once every 10 rides or so. Just make sure that your fluid's still good. It's a really common thing that people overlook. And yeah, on to the back and on to the next video.